Well, the church in Nigeria has made all necessary sacrifice through the past 10 years. First of all, we tried our best to get the federal government to acknowledge that we had a terrorism problem.
Okay.
That has taken almost 10 years for the government to acknowledge that we have a terrorism problem. Now, when they finally have now recognized that we have a terrorism problem, we are trying to explain to them that this new problem is a global problem. It has a local face, but it has a global backup. And that in order to solve this problem, we cannot use the traditional methodologies that we inherited from the military years to solve this problem. Now, there is a place in handling terrorism where you need the scalpel of a surgeon. But if you bring the cleaver of a butcher, you are going to end up creating even more havoc than you plan to. You are dealing with something that's very intelligent. Go and read the 9/11 report under the presidency of George Bush in America. It's a public document available for everybody to see. He said America did not know they had such a sophisticated enemy that was sleeping within their borders. An enemy that could easily have taken apart all their defenses. Now, what is happening is this. In Nigeria right now, all the government is doing, all the popular thing people are doing now is facing terrorism from one perspective.
Which is?
I'll come to that. Now, the modern terrorism structure that is operating in Nigeria is based on what Osama bin Laden developed in Sudan. There are 4 departments to modern terror. The first is what you see, the violent people who are exploding bombs and all that all over the place, but they are not the most dangerous. You have what they call the clerics of hatred, whose job is to recruit suicide bombers and to radicalize
hello, yes.
on what terrorism really is. What modern terrorism is that apart from the fact that you have violence, apart from the clerics that recruit for violence, you have those who are in charge of money, then you have those who work for PR. Now, what the public relation does is that when it first enters a country, you will not know whether it's political,
Or religious.
whether it's religious, whether it's cultural, whether it's tribal, whether it's land dispute. What you're going to see is that there's going to be a lot of confusion with all experts. One expert will say it is cultural. One will say it's cultural. One will say it's religious. One will say it's political. It is not cultural. It is not political. It is not religious. It's none of those things. It is a modern resurgence of global terrorism with established patterns in its modus operandi.
Okay, so what do you think is driving the terrorists? What do you... Okay, let me put you on the spot. You're not a psychologist, okay, or you're not a psychoanalyst, but how would you want to now classify that human factor that is driving this terrorist?
Look, there's no need for us to reinvent the horse. There are research papers going over the whole world to handle this new threat. And if Nigeria can integrate itself sensibly into the global loop, we don't need to go through all this rigmarole that the Nigerians are having to go through with lives being lost as we are going through all of this. There was a time when Christianity was misinterpreted. And some people disguising under taking the disguise under the umbrella of Christianity, launched what they call a crusade and devastated many lands, for which many of the churches had to apologize later on. Now, in the same vein, a set of people who think they are clever have also now taken up the basic tenets, they say, of Islam, and the interpretation that they have given to it, which is what concerns us right now. The interpretation that they have given to it is what is leading to this. Because I'll ask you a simple question. There's nothing anybody can say about Nigeria. In Jaji, when a military installation was bombed, you didn't go for the armory, you went for the church. If you find out the flavor that there is to this whole thing, it conforms to every symptom of global terror.
Okay, now, that actually...
Let me first use this opportunity to thank God for the leadership of, the can leadership of Pastor Ayo Orishajaifo. I've been working in this terror field for about 11, 12 years, and I know that, first of all, you had a government that was denying that there was a terror problem for many years. I want to remember the Madala bombing. I want to remember when Pastor Ayo had to go around with the Christians and they saw the bits of human bodies, little children's bodies, their noses, their mouth, their lips. You see, for a lot of people who sit down in some parts of the country where they are yet to understand that they are part of the plan of terrorism, it's good to be an armchair enthusiast. But when you watch a woman pregnant woman have her belly ripped open by reason of a challenge that somebody claims he wants to latch onto a religious creed as his motivation for it. When you see the decimation of communities, when you see raw bloodshed, when you see the terrible cunning with which this thing moves into government to infiltrate government circles, how it affects the thinking of the populace before it finally smothers life out of it, then you realize that, first of all, it has been an uphill task for the Christian component of governance to be able to speak on the same. Look, how many times have we spoken about these things, and instead we got visits from, demands and challenges from security officers. And the only reason why we continue to speak and why we have not stopped speaking is that when we look at the cost in human life, the degradation in human worth, when we see what is still coming. I was here 10 years ago. I remember the interviews I had on this station 10 years ago. 10 years ago, this station did not believe that we were going to have this problem. And this station, of course, was a part of governance in those days. Okay? 10 years after now, we are here still discussing the same thing. And we, who told you 10 years ago that this problem is going to escalate, are telling you that it is not like malaria fever that you said 2 weeks ago, a mosquito bit me. If Nigeria wants to solve its problems, we need to go back and bring out of our archives and find out what are these people using, where are they coming from. In 1956, Nigeria sent